Hi, this is On Imagination with the Ethical Asshole, and I am your host, the Salty Bitch. So, I'm working currently on this conundrum, and I started to unfold it, and I was like, so here's the problem. Teachers are spoon-fed, and they've been spoon-fed for so long because they were spoon-fed from infancy that now they don't have independent thinking. But they're supposed to teach independent thinking to the new generation of independent thinkers. We have words for this in logic. We have words for this. This is called a paradox. You cannot teach independent thinking if you are a spoon feeder. You don't even understand the concept of spoon feed versus independent thinking if you're a spoon feeder. And I wrote an entire book called The Salmon of Knowledge, and I handed it to some people who are teachers, and I said, here's the book, go. And they're not reading it. They're like, well, now what? You read the book and you apply it. And they don't have the process because they are so independent. And I'm going, is this a glimpse into the future that I have waiting for me? Because they have been spoon-fed so much, and everything is so be an automaton. And I'm going to call it that. It's automaton. It's the automaton. It's the automaton paradox. So I love making up new shit. Automaton paradox. And we know what this is. It's the automaton paradox. So my conundrum is breaking the automaton paradox. Now, if it's anything like any other paradox, which is a really fancy logical word for catch-22, then I should just be able to apply logic to the situation and fix it. So the logic of this situation would be becoming aware that you are an automaton. You have to become aware that you are an automaton. So an automaton, and this is really it, is it's literally a, well, I'm an independent thinker, and then you continue to parrot. And this is where I'm like, oh, no, dude, you are not an independent thinker, because I'm an independent thinker. And trust me, you are not at all like me. So I'm looking at certain people, certain groups, and I'm going, what I'm doing overall, every single video of these that I make, every single conundrum that I have, is I'm working out this entire logical sequence that flows and ebbs beautifully. And you just got to make sure that the whole thing is oiled properly and it runs smoothly. Now, this is the part they don't tell you. They told you you're in a matrix. You've watched the Matrix movies. And then about 20 years later, Oprah went on Oprah and she went, oh my God, the Matrix is real. And we all went, yes, dear. Yes, it is. And it's funny because there's another matrix that's going on, but it's not a matrix. This is actually the real thing. So you've got the matrix, and then you've got the real thing going on. The real thing that's going on is the logical sequence. And you've got your integrated point, and then you've got your disintegration. This is your reverse engineering. And then you have the integration back into Plato's point, which is where you are as the new integrated whole. Now, when you get to this point, you actually have superior foundation than where you were when you started. Because when you were here, you did not have the knowledge of the journey. So now you're back to where you are, only you're different now because you have the knowledge of the journey. So you're your soul self plus the knowledge of the journey. And then you do it again, and now you're your old self again, but you're also the second journey. So this keeps building up and building up. This is how evolution occurs. Now, understanding that the moment you are born, you are entering into this process, this chain reaction. So you are born into a sequence. And what the problem is first of all, people are not aware of the sequence. So that's the first problem. People have no clue that they're being born into a sequence because they have the insiders. Oh, let's call it something really cool. Should we call it the insider's curse? Should we call it the insider conundrum. Let's call it the insider conundrum. That sounds really cool. Insider conundrum. So you have the insider conundrum. The insider conundrum is you've got insider's point of view, and you're not going to know that you're born into a sequence until someone comes along and says, surprise, you're living in a sequence. You thought it was a fishbowl. No, it's a sequence. You weren't born in a fishbowl. You were born in a sequence. Now, what happened was the Matrix people came along and they built a fishbowl around a little part of the sequence. So you kept going round and around and around and around. And you thought, yeah, this is life. And then the Matrix movie comes along as a big metaphor and says, you're in the Matrix. But only the really intelligent people figured out that it was actually literal, not a metaphor. And they went, oh my God, you just described my life. And then they kind of got quiet and moved away from it, and they tried to solve out how to get rid of it. And then 20 years later, Oprah did her whole, oh my God, the Matrix is real. And these people over here went, yes, dear. Yeah, we know, sweetheart. We know. And the people over here looked at Oprah and went, what? Oprah says this, it must be. And then you had other people who were sitting here going, she's another moron. And so you got those people as well. So these are all the people in the big equation. But what you don't know is it's really a sequence. It's a sequence. And the sequence, basically, you had some people who came in and they finagled the sequence to create a 1955 offshoot. And you probably are living, in fact, 96% of us are living on that 1955 offshoot. Now, the agenda is get your ass back to the sequence. Now, there's going to be a lot of people who are running around naked. I used to be these people where they're running around naked. They're stripping off their clothes. They're going, freedom, I belong on no sequence. Well, Mother Nature has news for you. Mother Nature says, yes, sorry, sweetheart, but it's called the circle of life. You're going to be on the sequence. So the circle of life is what you actually could call the first sequence. That's a really good name for the first sequence. That's Mother Nature's sequence, the circle of life. And the fact that you are stripping off your clothes, running around screaming for freedom is actually part of the circle of life. Congratulations, you're already conforming to Mother Nature. You did a great job. Joke's on you. Your subconscious mind is hardwired for it. Now, flipping on over here, you've got the unnatural sequence, and this is the Matrix sequence, which isn't really a sequence at all. It is a catch-22 that loops you around in the automaton paradox, and that's where they've only got one nemesis, and that one nemesis is your independent thinking. Because if you're independent thinking, you're going back to the circle of life, and you're stripping off your clothes, and you're running around all over the place going, freedom! And that's awesome. Except the Matrix people don't like that. So you becoming aware that there is a sequence and that you're in it is a really big deal. You understanding that what a sequence is another really big deal. So now we have to enter into the world of what is a sequence. A sequence is an order of operations, the real order. Now, a lot of people, again, you're going to have those people. I love those people who think they can bypass the sequence because they want to be original, special, and different. Except what ends up happening is everything in a sequence is going to fall down if you don't have a strong foundation. These are the people who go, I'm going to build a house, but I'm going to build the roof first. No. You're not going to get your way. You are not going to be allowed to build your roof first. Physics says so. So those people, well, they're delusional because they're trying to build, or they think they can build a rooftop before they build supports, foundation, walls. But they're going to start with the roof. They've got some lessons to learn that Mother Nature rules all. While they're trying to figure out how to build a roof first, you've got other people over here who are actually following the sequence. They know that they've got to lay down a proper foundation. They've got to build the supports. Then they've got to build the framework for the wall. I grew up on construction sites, can you tell? And then you got to build the actual wall outside first and then inside last because of rain. That's when you build the roof. So then on the flip side of all that, you've got the Matrix people who say, fuck that shit. We're going to automate this. That way we don't have to think. So now you've got people who are automating the house building process. Now here's the problem with the automation is behind closed doors, they're doing the automation. But because they're narcissists and they like their segregation, they're going to have, it's exactly like a conspiracy theorist who comes in and hires one construction team to do part one. Meanwhile, there's another team that's in secret doing part two. Well, another person is over in the third quadrant building part three, and the people over in the fourth quadrant are building part four. And part one is not told about part two, three, or four, and part four is not told. You get the idea. So as a result, every one of those parts are completely constructed without the knowledge of the big picture, the integration of all of them, or the fact that there's any other components other than themselves. You were probably born into the first quadrant, and that's all you're doing. That's your little bubble. So you've been building away in your little bubble with your first quadrant, and you think this is the be all end all of life, and you're just following the instructions. And this is where it's a problem because you're not thinking, you're following. So when you follow, you stop thinking. That's a problem. So that's where the automaton paradox begins. Now, meanwhile, in the sequence, it's a completely different concept. First, you become aware that there's a sequence. Second, you have to understand how a sequence works. A sequence is simply the order of operations, but the order of operations is not really the right word there. That's borrowed from mathematics, and they didn't have the words right because they didn't study linguistics. So let's give them the right word. What you're really doing is you are doing order of independence versus dependence. You are talking about the order of predecessors to successors, and every predecessor has a dependent. Every predecessor has a successor. Every successor and dependent is dependent upon the predecessor or the independent. And what you don't know is that everything that comes before something has elements of that something inside of it, which is part of the foundation, which is a component, a core component to get it to function. For instance, you have a composition of your mom and dad inside of you, so you are genetically dependent upon your mom and dad. If you take out your mother, you're going to be 50% of you. You take out your father, you're going to be 50% of you. You take out them both, you don't exist because you are 100% dependent upon them. You are the summation of your parents. You are the integration of your parents, not just the summation, the integration of your parents. You are dependent upon them for your genetical, is that a word? For your genetic DNA. And that is the difference. That is an order because they are the foundation of you. So when you're talking about sequence, you're actually talking about your dependence upon a foundational core that came before you. This is why we are so attached to our origin. It's because you are dependent upon your origin to know who you are. Now, you're going to have your own cocktail and your identity comes into it. And that is where you become special and awesome and all of you. But there's a whole lot of skeleton that's happening here that is independent of identity that really is dependent upon your genetical origin. Genetical, that's not a word. Your genetic origin. So once you understand, and this is where your ego is really, really messing up the works, this is really what this comes down to, is there's a lot of people out there practicing philosophy today without knowing it. The problem is you cannot practice philosophy until you get your ego crushed by existentialism. So if you've never had your ego crushed by existentialism and you're dabbling around in philosophy, it's a dangerous combination because philosophy is, well, it's all of this. It's the quest of the self. But ironically, the quest of the self cannot take their ego with them. Oh, this is going to be interesting. A self quest cannot have the ego. And the reason why is because you end up building lie. You end up building things that aren't real because that's your ego fluffing a whole lot of bullshit. If I were to sit down and really break down what ego truly is, ego is insecurity. It is all the lies. It is the man behind the curtain. Ego is the curtain, which is all the things covering up the truth that there's a dude in the back. And that's what your ego is. So while you're questing for yourself, you've got this asshole gumming up the works, trying to make it look like it's something it's not. So now, instead of you actually focusing on you finding yourself, you're finding a whole bunch of lies to cover up your insecurity. And now you're getting a completely different cocktail, which is why you can't go building the self if you haven't crushed your ego first. And in order to crush your ego, you really need to study existentialism so you know how insignificant you are before you understand how important you really are. And only philosophy has the proper order of operations down for this, so you do this in the right order. Now take out existentialism, and now people are building egotistical methods and concepts. You're trying to build a roof without any foundation. So I'm looking at the automaton paradox now, and bottom line is, in order for you to teach independent thinking, you've got to be an independent thinker. The problem is, if you are not a proper thinker, this is not going to go. This is not going to work. It's just not going to work. That's like trying to have an outsider teach you how to be an insider when you're the insider. Not going to work. The teacher needs to get lessons from the child. The child is already knowing how to independently think. So now you've got an automaton trying to teach an independent thinker how to think. And all that ends up happening is the independent thinker becomes conformed to the automaton. Now we've got a big problem because the automaton also has ego. So now I've got egotistical automatons. And I'm going, this is going to cause a problem. How do I get around this conundrum? Now, if they were humbled automatons, it wouldn't be a problem. They'd be like, okay, let's solve this problem. Fantastic. Let's solve the problem. Here's a little bit of existentialism to make sure your ego is in check. Let's sit you down. Let's get to work. But if your ego is present, we're not going to make any headway, because instead of you actually building what you need to build, this is all about you being honest with yourself. This is self-honesty, but it's more than that. It's you being secure enough to know that your ego doesn't need to be here at this party. Your ego should not be at this party. I am not ego friendly. I'm really not. I did literally 5 days of calling everyone stupid to destroy the ego, which is what I went through with my masters, because this is part of the process. If you are not honest about how stupid you are, you will never get to your genius. Could you guys all write that down, please? That's really important. If you are not honest about how stupid you are, you will never get to your genius. And that's bottom line, because you're stupid and your ego, they're working together, and they will never allow you to measure your actual work. They're interfering with the data because they're trying to hide the statistics. They're trying to prove that they're better. You've got vaunters, you've got hubris, you've got hypocrites, and that's not going to get any work done. Because now, instead of us doing the work, we got to get around ego, opinion, and a whole lot of tampering of the data because you brought your ego to the party. So how do you know your ego isn't actually at this party? Now, there's a difference between self-worth, and this is the problem. A lot of people don't know the difference between ego, humble, and self-worth. So they think I'm just going to trash talk myself and I'm going to talk about how horrible I am. And that actually feeds ego because they don't know what ego really is. And this is the problem. Ego is how secure you feel about knowing nothing. And that's really it. If you are in a position where you don't know anything, but you're not honest with yourself about it, it's courage. It's courage to be honest. It is absolute courage to be honest. It's courage to be absolutely vulnerable and exposed. This is who I am. I don't know a goddamn fucking thing about economics because it is not at all matched to the code that is Mother Nature. It's man-made. I don't understand anything man-made. I cannot. It's without logic. So I can't figure it out. I cannot understand it. To me, that is pure insanity. I cannot understand finance because it is void of it's man-made. They took an abstract concept that is mathematics, and then they applied it to a concept that is 100% man-made. That is not nature-made. So I can't figure it out. And I'm looking at it going, I understand the math, but I don't understand the concept. Big difference. So I'm looking at this going, yeah, I cannot touch finance. I cannot touch economics. I have power economics for that reason, because the power economics is Mother Nature's economics. And now you're getting into scarcity and abundancy. Now you're getting into provisions. You're getting into pessimism and optimism, and your ability to make a projection based upon your inventory. So you know if you should be sad or happy because of your intake. And stepping outside of that power economics model, suddenly it's like, okay, there's a whole lot of things in economics that doesn't make sense because it's not compliant to Mother Nature that I can find yet anyway. So it actually tells a fraction of the story. From what I've researched on it, it tells literally a fraction of the story. Instead of it focusing on the big picture and showing how all of economics, it's only talking about scarcity mindset. And it's mind-blowing. It's really mind-blowing. Finance is part of economics. Like, that's the whole purpose of trade and exchange and bartering systems. And that's all circuitry, which is all batteries and physics. That all makes sense. But then you step on over to the economics world that is studied out there. And it's like, no wonder why you're all poor, because you only studied scarcity. So looking at this automaton paradox, if you are not honest about whether or not you're an independent thinker, and this is no man's land. This is escape room bullshit. That's exactly what this is. So there's 3 rooms going on. You have 3 rooms, and this is the addiction cycle. Is you've got the person who basically they want X. They are honest about what they have. They know they've got a problem. They have X. Now you've got 2 doors. The person who's honest with themselves is going to go through the right door. And you're going to have another person who's going to walk through the magic trap door. Now, the magic trap door is identical to the correct door that leads you out. And the person who has to choose, basically, the person has to choose. So person A goes out of the correct door. And when they do that, there's a massive path in front of them. There's full opportunity. They feel small. They feel vulnerable. It's huge. And they're scared. And now they have to confront their own courage, and they have to have a plan. And then they go forward. Now, they know that they chose the right door because they grow on, and their growth ends them in happiness. But not just happiness, it's happiness and growth. That's really important. Now, the other person, person B, chooses the other door. Now, the 2 doors are identical. They have to use their own discernment to figure out which door is the right door. So they go through the other door. They go through the magic trap door. Now, when they get to this room, it's going to look identical. It is the same in appearance as the first door. So now they think, I made it, and they feel happy. It looks the same and it feels happy, except they're not growing. There is no growth. So after a while, they start to notice that they're not happy. They start to notice that things are difficult. They start to notice that they keep running into problems. There's a lot of problems. In fact, and they're told that there's problems, so they don't think anything of it. Now, the growth challenge, when the A person goes through the growth challenge, they have problems too, but their problems equal solution, and their solutions equals growth, and their problems shrink. Now, when you look over at person B, when they go through these, there's problems, but the problems are the problems are growing, not them. And that's really it. They are happy, they look happy, they feel happy, but it doesn't feel right. Like something's off. But it's better than where they were, but they have no relativity. And that's the problem. They have no relativity. And and everyone gets here because you realize this isn't right. And this is probably the best advice I can give everybody I speak to, is when you get into this room, assume it's the wrong room. Assume it's the wrong room, because there is a good chance it is. Because you don't have relativity. You have point of origin, which is the original room where you started. And then you're going to have another point, but that's only 2 points. And this is the problem. If you do not have 3 points of data, then you are in the wrong room. You did not choose the right room. I guarantee you did not choose the right room, because you have no relativity. Now, if you go back to that B room, to that B point, you're going to think everything's great, but you're going to stall out. You're going to have no energy. That's a big one. You're going to have no energy. You're going to stall out, and you're going to feel tired a lot. In addition to that, you're going to need supplements. This is a big key. So you're constantly grabbing supplements. You're constantly needing resources. You never seem to have enough. Never enough. Never enough. That's huge. And you're going to think everything's fine. You just need all of the self-care. You're going to think it's fine. You just need all of these chakra stones. You think it's fine. You just need, if you're doing it right, you don't need any of that. Self-care is the first clue that you're not okay. Because if you were really okay, you don't do self-care. You don't need it. And that's it right there. When you're healed, when you're fine, you don't need self-care. You don't. When everything is balanced, self-care is not needed. And when you're balanced, you're not thinking about mental health. You're just doing it. You're doing it completely natural. You're living your life. But if you're working on maintenance, then you're not in the right place. So it's going to look great. It's going to feel great so long as you do all those things. But you're going to end up, and that's going to increase. There's going to be a gradual increase where you might start off with, well, I'm just going to add meditation. But that's not enough. So then you add meditation. Self-care becomes your next drug addiction. And that's really it, is self-care becomes a drug addiction where it's not going to be good enough. It wears off. So you add it. So you keep building it. Suddenly you've got people, I've met these people where they literally spend every waking hour constantly doing self-care. And their self-care exhausts them because they're overloaded with the amount of self-care. I had one person who was literally meditating almost 24/7. They would get up, they would meditate. They would do something for 30 minutes, they'd have to meditate. That is not healed. That's the illusion. That is, well, it's the delusion. So if your self-care is exhausting you, it's because you went in the wrong door. Now, you've got to now learn it a third time. So you have, because you got to get to the third place. So you've got to learn it a second time. You need this because you need 3 points of data. So you've got your point of origin. You've got the delusion, which again, you're going to need it. That way you have a point of reference so that when you get to the right location, you can go, is this the point of origin or is this delusion? The point of origin is the frying pan, or let's call that the fire. So you've got the fire, and then you've got the delusion where you're burning, but you don't know you're burning. This is really, really important. And when you finally get to where you're supposed to get, it's a completely different world because now you don't have any self-care needs. You're relaxed, you're happy, you're growing, you're flourishing, and the maintenance is like nil. There's no maintenance required. Your health care, your health becomes automated. And that's really it. So you go from this fire and you want to get out of it. You're at your point of origin. And then you move into this other space. And that's what I call the oasis. And you think you're fine. You think everything's great, but you're in a delusion. And you have to have the fire and the delusion so you can see both. Do you remember that moment when Dorothy, like, she lands in Oz? She's not in a great place. And she is sent on this stupid quest to go get the Wicked Witch's broom, right? Did anyone realize that was bullshit? That she never needed to go get it? Did anyone realize that? That was a wild goose chase? That she lost Toto, got ripped up, poor Scarecrow, his belly was over there, and his legs were over there, and his arms were over there, and that was him all over, And that was for nothing. All of it was for nothing. It was a wild goose chase that the stupid wizard sent them on because he didn't have a solution for them. He wanted to get rid of them. That is the only reason why they went through half of the movie, was because it was bullshit. Because this asshole sent them on a wild goose chase. I mean, think about it. It was a delusion. So when she gets back and she's like, all right, we completed the quest. And he's like, go away and come back tomorrow. I wonder what had happened if that had been the movie. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And they go home. We're back. Go home and come back tomorrow. A week later, go home and come back. Like, I could see that in the movie. And that's literally what a lot of people are doing, is they're going off on this stupid delusion. I'd turn back if I were you. And you're in the delusion. You're doing these stupid quests without any relativity of, it's over there. And here, this is why people really, if you are not trained to do this, if you are not aware, you're going to waste all of your time tracking down the broom of the wicked witch without any reason. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now, is they're going on all these stupid quests because they have no concept of relativity. None. And they're blind because they're not independent thinking. They are listening to all the bullshit that's on the internet. Oh, well, you need this. Well, you need this. Well, you need this. And you never stopped to bother to learn independent thinking or discernment. And because you don't have those tools, you're being led all over the place by a coward behind a curtain. And now how much time have you wasted? How much money have you spent on all of that crap because you were in a delusion? And when you really start to understand that you're going to have the fire, that point of origin, you're going to have the oasis and the delusion, and then you're going to have the reality. You're going to have the real Great Valley. I love that part in Land Before Time, when they're on the way to the Great Valley and they come to this little grove of trees. And they start announcing, I found it. And they think they're at the Great Valley. And it's a grove of trees. And she's boasting, I found it. And then the dinosaurs come, they eat all the grove, and it's gone. And they're like, oh, well, that was it for the Great Valley. And somebody says, no, that was not the Great Valley. A lot of people are there, except they're there for 20 years. They're there for 14 years. They're there for 10 years. Oh yeah, I've been here on my healing journey. There is no end. There's an end, guys. It only takes you a year. You just got to have the right data. And this is where a lot of people, it's the blind leading the blind, because you have a lot of automatons literally not independent thinking. Independent thinking, and if you have not been taught what independent thinking is, then you're not going to know what it is. And this is really, I think this of everything, this is my biggest anger that I had, like my frustration, is because I'm an independent thinker, but I know how to do analytical thinking. I know how to do critical thinking. And because I know how to do analytical thinking and critical thinking, I can do independent thinking. And I know how to use math to do metrics and measure things. So I know how to take something's temperature to figure out if it's lying to me or not. I know how to use these tools over here. So there's analytical thinking, critical thinking, there's independent thinking. These are all stages and tools that you use with independent thinking. And you're also using math to literally take measurement and temperature. And this is the most beautiful part of the brain, is the subconscious mind is designed for this. It does it naturally. But if you weren't trained to do it, if you were given an automaton education, and you were, then it's not going to work for you. You have got to be, like, if you weren't taught, if you were never taught, you would probably be fine. There's the child who, we're going to call it the Mowgli child. You have the Mowgli child, and the Mowgli child is the one who grew up without any kind of interference. Another great word for the Mowgli child is the Gen X. These are children who were so neglected that they just figured shit out for themselves, and there was no internet. So they just had to problem solve and figure it out, or they would die because they were Mowgli children. This is Gen X. This is like, we were so abandoned. And it was like, that's just the way it was back in the 80s. And welcome to the 80s. You're Mowgli children. And we learned how to do analytical thinking. We are the DIY generation because we figured it out. And I had the ancient Greek educational system to supplement all this awesome stuff. So that's like a whole nother, so you got your Mowgli child. We'll call that the base, the control group. The next group is going to be the ancient Greek or the philosopher's child. I'm going to call it the philosopher's child. And the philosopher's child is the one who gets that surplus. All right. So there's the Mowgli child. Now we're going to give you all of the Mowgli child tactics, but we're going to actually give you all the information that the Mowgli child is pulling off. And that's going to like condense it all and soup it up. So you're going to be like supercharged. So the philosopher's child is the Mowgli child on steroids. That's really it. Now, then you've got the automaton. And the automaton actually had the interference of the process, so it was completely shut down. Completely shut down. These are people who the subconscious mind is trying, but automaton keeps getting in your way. And if you do not know how to recognize your automaton brain conditioning, it's going to constantly interfere. Now, the problem with automaton children is this is the core of opinion and ego. This is a really big problem. And you're going to have, and I noticed there's two offshoots with the automaton child. The two offshoots of the automaton child is the person who's in the fire, and these are the people who are automaton people. They love it. They think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and they're happy with it. But the other group is the delusion group, where they think they're independent thinkers, but they're really not. Because I am the philosopher's child, so I know independent thinking when I see it. And I'm looking at people, I'll have a conversation, and the majority of you who insist to me that you are independent thinking, no, you're not. You're in the delusion stage. I have not yet met, give me a minute, one person I know off right off the top of my head is absolutely an independent thinker. An independent thinker is one that is so innovative and imaginative that they can create. That's how you really tell the difference. It's when they have authentic voice and they can create. They are amazing. Two people. They can create. Two people. In the thousands of people I have met, I have only met two. Everybody else is literally repeating what I've already heard from everybody else, and it's not true. It's literally copied right out of the Akashic records. It's ridiculous. And then there's other people who are copying. You can tell when they're copying. It's an authentic voice versus parroting. And I loved the show House MD. I love the show House. There was this episode, and this is at the beginning of it. This kid, he was probably in his late 20s. He was a doctor. He had just gotten out of medical school, and he was applying for a job to work with House. And the guy was boasting about how original and a free thinker and independent he was. And House slammed him. He's like, really? You think you're an independent thinker? You've got a kanji tattoo, which everyone and their uncle has today. You are dressed like this. You're talking like this. You are just another copycat of another copycat. And it was a beautiful burn. It was so well said. And that is what this delusion group is. It's the trending original thinkers. They're doing it because they're trending. And you can, oh my God, you can tell them a million miles away. There's nothing original about them. So you've got now the conformists, which is the parroting group of automaton. And then this is what it is. It's the nonconformist trending group, which is just another parrot. So now they're trending or they're nonconformists because it's the in thing to do. And that's it. It's the trending nonconformist. That's it exactly. So now you've got actual independent thinker and you've got trending independent thinkers. That's exactly it. They're trending. Oh, that's it exactly. So the trending people are the people, they're not doing it because it's trending. They've been caught up in the trend. they're parroting again. Their automaton brain turned on and caught them in that follow us, go with the herd trend, and they're trending independent thinkers. But they're not independent thinkers, they're trending. This feels so good to finally give voice to and say, because I'm over here as the philosopher's child going, why do they think they're independent thinkers? Because they're clearly not. Because when I give them information of ABC, they're not able to break it down and do basic comprehension. They are still expecting it to be spoon-fed. But, and this is it, is they're either spoon feeders or they have no idea how to do basic calculations. So they end up going off in left field because they don't know how to problem solve, because they didn't get basic information or basic education, because they were educated under the automaton educational system. So it's this absolute fascinating thing that I'm watching unfold. And when I step into this role of, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this. Here's the DIY program. I'll see you on the other side. And then it's, well, where are you? Well, what are you doing? I've given you literally everything you need. Everything you need. And I realized, oh, there's spoon feeders. Now, here's the reality check. And I think this is really what it comes down to, is there is a reality check that people need. If you are not honest about being an independent thinker, you cannot teach independent thinking. If you cannot reverse engineer it, if you cannot reverse engineer independent thinking, then you are not an independent thinker. Reverse engineering anything requires an order of operations with an actual breakdown. And I need a quiz that literally just shows people the truth of, you do this quiz. And that's really what it needs, is an algorithm of this is where it is. And it breaks the delusion of where you really are on the spectrum. But it's not that, it's you need to learn how to do this yourself. And this is it. If you don't even know, if you're sitting here going, am I an independent thinker? Or am I an automaton? You're an automaton. Because an independent thinker knows the exact order of operations to get to independent thinking. An independent thinker knows how to do analytical thinking and critical thinking. And they know how to assess right from wrong, not just ethics, but truth from lie. So they can tell truth, they can check validity, they can check consistency. They know how to use math. I'm looking for it, guys. I got one word in here, one thing. And once I find it, I know it's going to be like the factor. It's like one if-then clause. If you can do X, then you are Y. And once I find it, it'll click and everything will fall into place. It's knowing how math applies to independent thinking. You're an independent thinker when you know how math is used in independent thinking. That's it. You're an independent thinker when you know how math is used in independent thinking and you can teach it to others mathematically. Cut and dry. Oh, I love math. That's why I love math. I love you, math, because math is so simple that way. Done. Nope, that's it. No, that's it. A true independent thinker can break down the mathematics, can teach you the math and show you the formula for independent thinking, and then can teach it to you. So if you can't do the math of independent thinking, you're not an independent thinker. You're guessing. You're an automaton, because automatons follow pattern without understanding it. You're an idiot savant of following. You're an idiot savant of independent thinking. That's not independent thinking. You need the theory of independent thinking to be an independent thinker. You need the theory. You need the theory. If you cannot break down the actual math for independent thinking and break down the math to teach it to somebody else, you're not an independent thinker. Math is the be-all, end-all of independent thinking. It's literally analysis and critical thinking, which is mathematics. So if you're not using math, you're not an independent thinker. You are a follower. You are trending. If you don't know the math, you are not an independent thinker. This is cut and dry. Well, I'm an independent thinker. I can't explain it. Then no, because you're doing it automatically. An independent thinker isn't on automatic. They're thinking. There it is right there. If you can't do it while thinking, then you're not thinking. Thinking is math. And if you're not thinking with math, you're automated. There is no independent thinking without math. It doesn't exist. Yeah, this is it. This is the be all end all. So if somebody comes up to you and insists that they're an independent thinker, if you are not sure, if you want to know, can you explain it? If you are doing it automatically, if you're following your intuition, you're automated. This is the difference between independent thinking. Is an intuition is automation. Boom. That's why it's intuition, because it's been integrated inside of you. An independent thinker knows how to reverse engineer their intuition to get the math to say, hey, this is how it's done, because we're independent thinkers. So if you're following the crowd with your intuition, you're just following the crowd. You just found the intuitive crowd that you're following, but you're still following the crowd. You're not independent thinking, because that is just pure math. There is no negotiation on this. This is the actual definition of independent thinking. It's sequence. It's knowing the precise sequence, knowing the order of operations that require critical thinking, analytical thinking, so you can get an independent thought, because you're independent of intuition. You're supposed to be using both of them together, thinking with intuition. Intuition is not supposed to be your fail-safe. You're supposed to trust your intuition, but not use it 100% of the time to steer it. That's why Mother Nature gave you a subconscious mind and a brain. It's another black and white thinking. It's another black and white concept. I'm just going to use all my intuition and I'm never going to do anything with thinking. Well, now you don't have brain elasticity. Oh, brain stretching. Oh, no, that's dangerous to not have. Brain elasticity is everything. Mental elasticity is vital. Mental diversification is vital. It is mindless to be automated. So all these people who are claiming, oh, well, I'm intuitive. Well, great. A 2-year-old is intuitive. That's how they keep out of trouble. That's not an accomplishment. You're 45, boasting that you use your intuition. Good for you. You have the accomplishment of a 2-year-old. Try independent thinking. Try integrating independent thinking with intuition. Oh my God, do see what happens. Now that's something. But if you're not even at independent thinking, you haven't even passed 6 years old yet, 6 ethical years old, because independent thinking begins at 7 ethical age. So if you're just walking around based off of your intuition, yeah, you really missed the point. You really missed the point. It is not supposed to be an automated process. That is supposed to be something that you integrate with independent thinking, but you can't get there if you haven't taken care of independent thinking, which is pure math. So that is your reality check. That is what you really need to sit back and ask yourself, do I actually know independent thinking, or am I just following the next trending crowd? Because your intuition is automated. That's not news. That's just human being. Animals do that. Animals do that. So you're great. You're on par with a chimp. You need to think, because thinking is math. And it's the ability to step outside of that automation. Now, where humans got this all wrong is they inserted their own agenda into a completely different sequence and then put you through appropriation with propaganda. And then they put you on a completely different intuitive path that actually contradicts your intuitive path. But they still trained you how to shut your brain down. But if you're not thinking, if you cannot explain the math, you're not thinking. You're just following your intuition like an automaton. So thank you, and may the kindest of words always find you.